Hey, Ally, how are you?
Hi, Jen. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for today's conversation just because of the sheer hilarity that was happening behind the scenes before we hit the live button.
You know, what I appreciate about both of us is that we are authentic in wherever we show up. So how we were just chatting versus how it's not like we're all of a sudden like and go polished. No, we are cackling the same behind or in front of the camera. So
Polish isn't even really in my vocabulary unless I'm talking about the revising process.
yeah, and that's not even a word I would use. Polish. No, that's not. No, but yes, books do need to be polished, but we can find better uses, better words for this, considering
Yes,
it's not in my
100%.
personal vocabulary.
Yeah, me neither. Neither is ladylike. I'm anti that whole word, phrase, meaning,
No.
connotation, all the things.
No, you know what the interesting part is that my last name is Grace, and I could be the furthest from graceful. I mean, like it could not be any worse of a last name for me to possess. But
Yeah.
it adds for anyone who knows me well, just sees the irony in the name here. So it works.
I would be the
My
same
son's
way.
way.
Yeah, graceful's not a part of who I am either. Like especially given that like I have 2 left feet and I can trip over air. I'm just such a klutz.
Yeah. My son, unfortunately, has the exact same quality where he walked into my office yesterday for nothing, tripped over the side of my desk and went landing into my window and like took half the curtain down. I'm like, you're in here for 4 seconds. Could you get away? Like the definition of like a bull in a china shop. So,
as you can tell, folks, Jen and I are both boy moms.
So boy moms are a thing.
A lot to share and a lot to say, but that's actually not what Unscripted with Ally and Jenn is about, even though we probably could turn it into a parenting podcast. We are here to share the dirt, the dish, the deets on writing and publishing a book and doing it the right way. So Jen, why don't you just kick us off with who are you in the publishing space? What do you do? How do you operate? What's your jam?
My jam is to help authors get their books published. So Publisher Purpose is a hybrid book publisher, and our focus is on nonfiction books. So we do self-help, business, leadership, memoir, a lot of diversity, equity, inclusion style books. I am the author of 7 books. And Ally, this is news to you. I have started to write my 8th. This is I know, I'm like a glutton for punishment. So this is the first public declaration that I have indeed started an 8th with a goal of having it out in 2026, because I'm trying to do every 3 years, release my own personal book, in addition to helping the abundant amount of other authors get their books out as well.
Okay, so are you going to give us a sneak peek on what this 8th book is about?
Well, here's the thing. I'm trying to figure out how to frame it, but it's the idea that a midlife crisis is not actually a midlife crisis.
It's just life.
Also, yes. Yeah. Like we all have these like conceptions of like what a midlife crisis looks like, of like, oh, you have to go out and buy something frivolous and things that you don't need. But really, what if it's like actually coming into your own because you've been like, dealing with other things up until the point where you have adult money, for example. So yeah. I don't know where this is going. By the time it actually comes out, it might be something completely different. But that is the seed of the idea that I am building upon.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Midlife becoming, midlife transformation, midlife leaving the cocoon. I like it.
Effort. Like I'm trying. I don't know how LinkedIn censors things, so I'm not going to swear here. But like just like a good old FU to the midlife crisis idea. So we'll see what happens. I don't know.
All right, awesome. I love it. Sweet. So like Jen, I'm also an author, and I'm always working on something else, but it's very slow going when you spend the rest of your time writing and editing for everyone around you. So that being said, I am the CEO and founder of The Right Place, Right Time. I am an international book coach and ghostwriter and developmental editor. My sweet spot is nonfiction with a passion and niche in memoir. And I am really here to witness people who are trying to turn their past pain into purpose by writing impactful and emotionally compelling books that are not only going to change our world, but is actually going to change the individual who's working on that book. And gosh, I guess the thing that I've been working on since we're sharing what those next books are, the thing that I've been working on behind the scenes for a couple of years now is my next memoir, and I have been playing around with the title. Right now it's loosely entitled When I Die. And it's a memoir about coping with our humanity. through the lens of a very special relationship that I had with a woman who I was with when she took her last breath, and really examining life and loss and grief and purpose. And I imagine that it will be gut-wrenching, but also has periods of levity, because I don't do anything without a little bit of lightness and humor.
Yeah. Wow, that sounds amazing. And do you have your current book baby that was just like, weeks old in front of you somewhere?
I sure do. Do not write a book until you read this one.
Yeah. Look
basically
at that, baby.
the twin of Jen's book, Publish Your Purpose. And the reason that they're twins, even though they're what do they call them when they're not identical?
Fraternal
twins, because they basically are the same book.
Similar in size at birth.
Right? Because they cover a lot of the same stuff. So if anybody out there watching this now live or catching the replay, you need a desk reference to sit right next to you as you're navigating this whole writing and publishing space. You either want mine or Jen's, or you want the two of them. And you also want a stack of Post-it notes and a highlighter.
Yes. Do it right. We should have a whole bundled package that includes Post-it notes, highlighters, a guide, both books, the whole nine. That would be fun.
But can you imagine how much it would be to ship just that box, given how gigantic our book babies are?
Oh my God. They're like, and what's interesting is that I would imagine that for someone watching this, maybe the size doesn't really clearly come through on a video to how thick it is. But
what's your total page count? Mine's 402.
Yeah, you beat me. Mine's 292 numbered pages, and then there's another 40 or so unnumbered. So
right. Okay. Yeah, they're pretty close. They're beefy, but they're great. And they're super important to the writing and publishing process.
They are. And they really are desk guides. I like that framing of it.
Yeah, they are. They're total desk guides. And I know that we both cover in our books today's topic for Unscripted, which is getting more bang for your book, the revenue generating opportunities that your book provides. So what we want to do before we open it up to those who are joining us live, to ask questions and get live coaching, is we kind of want to just give 30,000 foot view on a few things that are really important for authors to know around revenue coming from one's book. And so, Jen, where would you start us off in this conversation?
I was thinking that perhaps I can use my girthy book baby over here as a case study, potentially, to kind of show what the path might look like for somebody. So if someone purchases this book, they are gifted the book, they get it for free, however they acquire said book. In it, I have calls to action absolutely everywhere, but they're not everywhere in an obnoxious way. Because I think, I don't know about you, but I've definitely read books where it's so self-serving from the author's standpoint that they're like, go do this, go do this, go do this. And it's very hammering it home, getting people to go buy a program or to go do something else. So I've done it much more subtly throughout, but it's not to get people to leave this and go buy a program. It's to leave this to go get another resource that is going to be complementary or supplemental to some area of the process that they have. So if they want to go participate in our 30-day writing challenge, it's accessible to them. If they want to go download our book cost blueprint, that's accessible to them. There's no cost involved for those things. But when we think about revenue generating and how to actually have our book help us generate revenue beyond the sale of the book itself, when someone goes and participates in that 30-day video series, or they go and download that book cost blueprint, they are now in our web, in our PYP family. And so they're on our newsletter, they're on our mailing list. And both of those potential sequences, right, where they're bringing people along a journey to build that trust factor with in this case, myself as the author in my company, but for, whoever's watching, you as the author, because we can't just it seems like a tough sell for you and I to be sitting here right now having this conversation and someone be like, you know what I want to do? I want to invest $20,000 with one of them to either write it or publish it, right? That's not it's a longer tail in my experience from a author standpoint. So if you're selling coaching or consulting or you're speaking, it's not an easy sell sometimes. So you have to really be mindful of how you bring someone on the journey. So when we're thinking about book revenue generating, how can we think about how to get your book in the hands of as many people as possible? But then beyond that, how do we make sure it's clear to your reader that you are available for all of these other ways in which you can support them? And I think that that's what a well-crafted book does with a lot of intention, is just makes it easy for the reader to say, oh, wow, I see what Ally's, I see this is what Ally's approach is to this. This is interesting. Maybe I want to reach out. Maybe I want to get on her mailing list and just learn a little bit more and just observe and lurk in the distance for a while. And then you get that opportunity when they reach out, or maybe they're on the list and you're reaching out to them. And so to me, that's kind of like thinking about an entire, and I hate using funnel because there's so many marketers that are like a marketing funnel, a sales funnel, a enter anything before here funnel. And it's not that. It's more of like an intentional journey for somebody. You're not just looking at somebody as like a number. Like, let me see how many people I can throw into a funnel. I don't like the way that feels. Although it is very much a funnel. You have a lot of people kind of coming in at the top and slowly working their way through your process to understand, like, wow, I think publisher purpose would be a right fit for me, or I don't think it's a right fit for me. Either way, that's kind of what you're trying to get people to understand and decide.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say it's a book, and this is overused in the industry. Your book is your business card. What the hell does that even mean? The way that I think of it is lead, nurturing, and generation. So yes, the book falls in the marketing and sales space ultimately, right? But what you're really allowing your book to do is lead your prospect or audience back to you in some capacity, right? And so, as you mentioned, Jen, like that could be to this free resource. It could be to that upcoming writing challenge, right? But ultimately, the book is leading the person back to you in some capacity. And what they're grasping for is what they're ready for on their journey. And then once you get them into your world, into your ether, right, then you can nurture the next phase for them, the next path along their journey. But before even getting there, what I like to really talk to authors about up at the front end, and not because this is my area of expertise, it isn't. I like to play in developing the manuscript and writing a really great book. But I feel like I wouldn't be doing my due diligence as their guide in that process if I didn't start by saying, like, we got to think big picture and we got to be strategic from the very beginning. So let's understand what the opportunities are here for your book. And so I like to think of it as a wheel. I just drew this as you were talking. Not because I wasn't listening, but the center of the wheel, right? The dot, I can't do this. It's like backwards. Is your book, and the arrows out are like the different opportunities that might lead to cash or revenue opportunities. Okay. So in one instance, like the book might lead out to a speaking gig that pays. In another instance, the book might lead out to a sponsorship opportunity, right? Which increases more visibility. It might lead out to additional merchandise. Like with my first book, Dear Universe, I ended up creating an entire box full of goodies that includes the book. Right? That's another way of generating revenue that ultimately first stems from your book. So it's really understanding, like, how does your book lead to additional ways to engage, to inspire, and to make a sale at some point, right? So for me, that's like the first thing, is really understanding kind of the wheel analogy. But I think beyond that, authors also need to understand that book sales really, or I shouldn't say book sales, the return on investment on your book is not a one-to-one ratio when it comes to book sales. So I get this question a lot. I have to imagine, Jen, you do too. How can you guarantee that I will make back the money I put into my book, right? How can I guarantee that I'm going to get my return on my initial investment? Number one, I always say I cannot promise that. I cannot guarantee that, because ultimately there are way too many circumstances, way too many factors. And honestly, that particular end game has a lot to do with what the author puts into promoting, selling, marketing, and again, understanding big picture and how that book brings back revenue. A lot of people have the understanding that if they put $10,000 into their book, then they need to then divide their $10,000 by the retail price of their book and sell that many copies in order to make back their $10,000 investment. So let's just break that down, right, into like some actual ideas. So $10,000 is what they've spent. They're now selling their book for $10. So they need to sell 1,000 copies. All right. But what people don't understand is that you are not necessarily making back all $10 on every single book because of the way that this all works out in the long run. So it's more like you're going to have to sell 3,000 copies or more to get back your $10,000. And you as a publisher, Jen, I'm going to let you dive into the details of exactly, well, if they're not getting 10, what are they getting? But what I want to wrap up with is the point that we need to think bigger and we need to think outside of the box, because book sales isn't going to be the thing that is going to bring you back the money. It's going to be getting your book in the hands of the right people, the right opportunities that do have the big dollars attached, so that you can bring back your return. But Jen, I want to hear from you as the publisher, the whole piece on royalties. Like, what are authors, how should that equation actually look? How should they be doing that math?
Lord knows. Okay, so this math is a thing, just for starters. And while you and I are still chatting here, anyone who is watching us live and would like some live coaching by yours truly, the two of us here, feel free to throw a note in the comment and just, in the chat, let us know what's on your mind, and we'll come to you. So what's interesting is that I was just talking to somebody yesterday who's interested in working with us, and we were looking at a proposal, and for his book in particular, based on size and the amount of editing is needed, is about $20,000. And what I was able to share with him is that it would take about 1,500 copies of his book to sell in order to make back that 20,000 investment on the publishing side. And that is a net, not a gross. So when we look at, it's so complicated to explain, I'm going to try to be succinct. When we look at the numbers, every avenue generates a different net profit for a book. So for example, if I am selling this behemoth on my website, which is full color, so it's expensive to print. This thing costs $17.97 just to print. The hardcover does. The paperback costs a little over $13. The black and white's under $5. So like big difference when we add color into the mix. But if I'm selling this on my website, for example, I'm selling it for $55, which includes a couple of other things, a bookmark, it's signed, blah, blah, blah. That's 55. So when I look at the profit of that, I have the 55 less the 17.97 less the 4.67 for printing, and then I know that my envelope that I ship it in costs 51 cents. So like I have it all broken down. So when I look at all of those numbers, I can see, all right, how much money am I going to make on this? And it ends up being, I want to say at the end, it ends up being like something like $15. Or maybe the paperback's 15, the hardcover's like 20 something. If I sell my book on Amazon, which is a black and white version of it, that it cost me $4.91 to print. And it's a paperback. So I make $10.05 on that. So when I'm looking at it, I can make basically double the amount of money by selling this book through my own website. But I can also sell this through Amazon. So Amazon's making $10.05 for me. My website's making maybe $20 for me. If I'm selling it in person at an event, I don't have shipping and packaging anymore. So now that's a different cost. So it's a matter of kind of looking at all of the different ways. And so for our authors that we work with, we actually have a spreadsheet that gives out all the configurations. Like if you're selling it in person, this is what you'll make. If you're selling it online, this is what you'll make. And then being able to kind of map that back. So the 1,500 number I had provided for the 20,000 is based on about a $13 profit margin, about a $13. Because we know that like if you're selling your book in person, for example, you can easily make a $13 profit margin if you're pricing it properly. So that's what we have to be thinking about, because distributors take 40%. So like if your book's selling on Amazon, they're taking 40% off of your retail price, and then they're also taking the print cost off. It doesn't leave a lot of room for profitability, especially when we're talking about hardcover books.
Yeah. So, I mean, if I was to put that succinctly, right, is when you're thinking about ROI just on book sales alone, recognize that when a publisher says to you, oh, you get 75 or 80% of X, it's 75 or 80% of what's left after everyone else gets paid.
Yep.
Okay. Everyone else or everything else, like postage and shipping being a thing rather than a person. And so you need to have that in mind before you just sit down and do the math and think, okay, I'm selling it for this, so I just need to sell that many copies.
Yeah.
The end. I love, Jen, that Publisher Purpose has like a calculator for them to like figure out the different configurations. But this is exactly why we're having this conversation, because we don't want authors to miss opportunities to make additional revenue off of their book because they're thinking like this, number one, small and narrow, but also thinking as if it's like a clothesline, like a 1-to-1 ratio, right? Linear. One book sale equals this amount of dollars, and therefore that's how I calculate the whole thing. I like to think of it more like tangled Christmas lights. Somewhere in there is your book on one end, okay? And maybe that book like led you to get onto a podcast because the podcast was only accepting people with books. And then an audience member who follows that podcast is connected to a conference who's looking for speakers. And so then they reach out because they heard you on the podcast. And so now they've invited you to speak. And now the speaking comes with a little bit of money and the ability to sell your book at the conference bookstore. And so now you're getting paid to speak, which came from your book, and you're selling books. So you're getting book sales. Do you see where I'm going with this, people?
You are like a wealth of amazing analogies, by the way. Yes, I think tangled Christmas lights is the most perfect way to describe how you make money on books. So beautiful. Well done. I will absolutely use it and I will give you credit.
Oh, bless you. All right, Julie, you had a question. What did I include in the box that I created that goes with your book? Yes, unboxing time. This is like
I have the same question, Julie. And Julie is a PYP author and is an absolute gem of a human being. So I'm so happy that you're here.
All right, Julie. Well, let's get you some inspiration on what you can do with your book. Okay, so number one, I had help from an intern for these over the summer, but we custom designed this box to match my first book. Dear Universe, I Get It Now. Okay, so you can see how these are like beautifully branded together. And then what I've been encouraging people to do is use the inside of the cover to collage with stickers. And there's actually stickers included in the box.
People love stickers, and it's such an easy, low key effort.
So easy. And so one of the stickers is actually designed by a friend and colleague and power partner. Hope is the thing with feathers. But the other little ones that I threw in here came in like a packet of 100 from like some Amazon seller. I threw in a permission slip piece, right? Because the whole box is around bravery and standing out and being authentic. And I threw in a pencil that has a fun affirmation on it. And this one actually is so close to my tagline, which is be brave, be you, it's time. And the pencil is be bold, be brave, be you. Could not have matched that more perfectly. But the things that I spent time creating in the earlier iteration of my book that then eventually went into the box was a matching pen, a matching bookmark, a book plate.
Yep. I'm going to explain that in a second.
And then more recently, I created a card deck that goes with the book. So these are Be Brave, Be You bravery boosters. I took some of the bravery boosters that were already in the back of the book and created them into cards and then added more that I came up with. And then I did an unofficial companion guide journal to the book because lots of people kept asking, is there going to be a journal that goes with everything? And I didn't know if I wanted to bite off an entire journal yet. So I started to just play around with something that was 4-colored bite size that I could get printed locally to put into the box. Now, what I haven't done yet is itemize everything so that if people have the book and they don't want the box, they could buy the journal separately. They could buy the card deck separately. But this was a lot of fun to experiment with, play around with. It was like the closest thing that I could get to like developing my own little subscription box. And it was just fun to create, and think a little bit more broadly than just the book itself.
Yeah. Can I ask some follow-up questions?
You sure can.
Number one, can you please explain what a book plate is for those who may not know?
Oh my gosh, book plate. I know this is like so old school, but it's like one of the stickers that goes inside a book that says it belongs to you, and you fill out your name in the middle. So this is my copy. You can't touch it. It's like the dog that pees on the fire hydrant, except in a much.
You're like, I'm territorial. This is mine.
This is mine. You can't have it. Yeah.
Book plates can also be used if you are having someone help fulfill your book orders. So for example, we are working on a partnership with a company in Stamford, Connecticut to help us fulfill orders for our authors. And we have someone in the UK and we want to be able to fulfill locally in the US to save on costs, etc. we are not shipping books to the UK to ship the books back to the US that are signed. So we can use something like a book plate similar to this, where she can then sign and inscribe, and then it can be assembled inside the front of the book here. So when the person, the reader, gets a copy of the book, it is still a signed copy. It just didn't have to be the physical book itself at first to be signed. So that's another way to think about using it.
Because I was just thinking, Jen, so with Do Not Write a Book, right? So this is a co-authored book between me and the owner of Press 49. Bridgett is in Arizona and I'm here in Vermont. And if we want to do anything signed, like, and she's, you know, kind of the one that's shipping them out from the press, like, how do I give her my Hancock, right? Like, without just like, so.
This is how you do it.
You're just giving me the answer. Done. The answer is book plate. All right.
Sure is. All right, good. Look, see, isn't this great? So we're helping others and helping each other at the same time. All right.
Well, that's the name of the game, my friend. That's why we came together in the first place.
That is very true. This is how it always is, except others get to like see the brainstorming in real time. Second question, your cards. So Julie made a note like, ooh, never thought about cards. So we've got a couple of authors that have done cards. Curious how you went about it in whatever level of detail you care to admit.
Sure. So honestly, I had a business coach that had done their own card deck, and I liked that one. I said, well, where did you do yours? Like, how did you go about it? And then she kind of gave me her process. So there's a company called makingplayingcards.com. And you basically do your design. You can do your design in their interface, but I find that it's a little bit limited. So what I did, again, with the help of an intern, I gotta love the interns. We made our design in Canva. We uploaded our design over to makingplayingcards.com. And then over there, we used that engine to choose like the finish, the box, whatever. And then the front of the box, I actually did stickers on Zazzle and then just adhered the sticker to the box. Otherwise, it's just this plain kind of glossy.
Was there an upsell option to have it be in like some kind of more designed box?
You know, I don't remember seeing one. Now, there was definitely way fancier boxes, and I like some fancy ones, but they jacked the price up, especially when you're trying to buy in bulk. They jacked the price up to a point that just wasn't economical, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do my own sticker, put it on the box. It's going to be fine. It's totally functional and effective. And you know, and for me, given what my book was about and kind of the stuff that I shared, like a card deck was like almost a no, you know, it was a very obvious kind of like, oh, totally can do cards.
Love it. So
good. Tony, you're here. Hi, Tony.
Yes, Tony, do you have any questions too? We are here. We can certainly entertain ourselves, as I think everyone watching understands, but it's even better when we can answer questions.
I mean, the other thing we didn't mention as a revenue option is like workshops, programs, book clubs that you could, you know, you could be selling merchandise and books, right? So it's not just book sales. So I'm just encouraging like more outside of the box thinking. Okay, so Zazzle is where I had the stickers made.
With a Z.
Z. And so Vistaprint is one place that a lot of people get their stuff from. I find Zazzle has a little bit more robust design features in it for customization, and sometimes their prices and discounts can also be better. So comparing the two, and I'm sure that there's other places, but Zazzle and Vistaprint are the two that I'm most familiar with. Canva also has now the ability to like print from Canva. I've not done that, and I haven't compared pieces there. But I do a lot of design stuff in Canva.
Yeah, Canva, I feel like it was so smart to move into the printing side of things because it's so much easier. I've done business cards from there. I have these little promotional cards. Anyone feel free to steal this idea, where it's my book cover on the front, and then on the back side, it's free ebook download. So, you know, I can bring these all over the place because for me, because I want people to get into that web that we were talking about before, that I don't really, my focus isn't to get someone to buy the book. So if I can give them the ebook and that gets them on the mailing list, that's just as good to me. But I did these in Canva, and then Sticker Mule is where I like to buy stickers from. It's like mule like a donkey, Sticker Mule. They have like some really heavy decal type of stickers. So if you're looking for something that's like really solid quality, that's also an option too.
Nice. I love it.
So many good places.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think that the box. So here's another point that I want to make. So Dear Universe, I Get It Now came out in 2020. The card deck and the journal and the box, I just put that together in the fall of 23. And the point that I want to make about all of this is that the revenue generating opportunities do not just like remain within the first year of your book coming out. Okay. And this really relates to something else that's super duper important, which is that your job as a promoter of your book never stops. And when you've got a book that is evergreen, where it doesn't matter what year it is, the stuff that you say inside it still matters, still counts, is still relevant, then you have a very long runway, my friends, to continue to come up with new and creative ways to get that book into more hands and to create more opportunities of how it brings business back to you, whether that's paid or unpaid. And so I want you to not only think outside the box and think about the wheel and the Christmas lights and that kind of thing, but I also want you to not be limited by when your book came out. Like keep creating, keep coming up with ways to get it out there. That is how you're going to open up those doors that you don't even realize exist. Like, because you don't know who's out there, like catching up on things, seeing things. And you know, who might not have been interested 3 years ago might be interested now because they're in a different season in their life. They need something else. They've got a different pain point. Jen, you want to piggyback on anything that I'm just rambling over here?
Yeah, and you're rambling in a great direction, because where my mind went was, it is our job as authors to listen to what our readers are asking of us. And so you might get a request for, like, your book might have just come out today, and people are saying, well, what if you had this, or how about that? Oh my God, I would love to buy a mug. I wish you had a sweatshirt, whatever the things are. Now is not going to be the time that you have the mental bandwidth to focus on doing those things. But you might have it in 6 months, might have it in a year, might have it in 2 years, right? So again, to your point, like when you have a book that is more evergreen, it really has a long shelf. Like memoirs in particular, if you have a memoir, those live on forever. Like there's really no end date with a memoir. Nonfiction gets dated when you're talking about very specific, more relevant topics. But I think it's wise. Like I advise our authors to just create like a parking lot document, where as the ideas come to you, just file them away. Future you will get to them when you have time to get to them, but you don't want to lose the idea either, even if you can't execute on it right now.
Yeah, 100%. One of the coolest things I did when Dear Universe was launching, and I had just enough bandwidth for this, but there was a lot of other things, like other ideas, I let go. I didn't do a book club right away. I didn't do the box thing right away, even though it was kind of like a murky idea back here. But what I did do was I did a limited time and limited amount of what I called at the time something ridiculously alliterative. Berthium's book launch bookworms bundle. I don't even know. So cheesy and wonderful. And it was a box, and it came with a signed copy of the book, a matching mug, the pen and the bookmark that already existed, and then a 20 or 25 minute virtual coffee chat with me. I only had like 10 or 15, and they sold within 24 hours.
It's amazing.
But then it was like, there was these like original gangsters, if you will, who had like the mug to go with the book and go with these other things. And again, a lot of fun to create. But, you know, the whole point being just like, you know, really step outside of your comfort zone and think big. Like, even if you can't do it right away, don't be afraid to imagine. Yeah. Julie says, can you talk more about creating a workshop for your book? What could that look like? So Jen, I know you've got something, but I'll just jump in here to say, so this is a really great example. So do not write a book until you read this one. My co-author and I have now done a talk at a virtual conference that was called Do Not Write a Book Until You Attend This Session. And the whole session was basically riffing off of the biggest and best points from this book, right? Then here locally, I tried doing a series of events I called I use the same title, Do Not Write a Book Until You Attend This Session. And people could buy tickets to come to part 1, 2, 3, or 4. And each of those things was in line with a part of the book and highlighting those particular ideas. And now coming up in April, she and I are doing a 2-part workshop series called Do Not Write a Book Until You Attend This Workshop. And the price of that workshop comes with a copy of the book. And we're going to be facilitating and guiding them through 2 90-minute sessions where we cover the first 2 parts of the book in the first session, the second 2 parts of the book in the second session, and people walk away with a customized roadmap for their book based on what we teach in ours. So that's an example of like turning your material into a workshop. But Jen, I know you've done tons of things.
Literally the same formula to such a degree. So like my book has 18 chapters in it. 17 of them lend themselves to being their own independent workshop. So when I was launching my book in October, I reached out to my undergrad alumni association and I was like, hey, I see these emails come through with authors coming and speaking about a topic. Is there something I might be able to do with you? And they're like, yeah, do you want to do 1 session, 2, 3, 4? Like they were wide open to the possibilities. And I was like, let's do a 4-part workshop. And so where do you think the 4 parts came from? Directly from the book. And so, you know, like there's the writing portion of it, there's the mindset piece of it, there's the publishing side. And so if you have a book that is written in a intentional way from the start, which is when you're literally just starting the writing or just starting to work with someone like you, Ally, how can we think now that we can turn this into other material later? I think that's really important. But what I will say I did, and I will put the caveat here, that I do not believe that AI should be used to generate content of a book. There's no exception to that, in my opinion, at this moment in time, as of March 14th, 2024. However, there are many ways we can use AI to help us figure out how to do something with our own content later. So what I did is I went into good old ChatGPT and I said, give me an outline for a presentation about this. And I dropped in pieces of my book. And within a couple of minutes, I had my 4-part series figured out that I was going to do for my alumni association. But it was specifically using ChatGPT to get me to just give me the framework that I was looking for to be able to translate it from written word to more of a spoken word and like bullet points. And it worked really well. So Julie, you could totally do something like that with yours. And so Julie's topic is about LinkedIn and kind of leveraging it from like a personal branding standpoint, looking at your professional brand, your business, your company's brand. So there are so many opportunities for you, Julie, to be doing LinkedIn workshops, for example.
Yeah. I mean, and like snippets on live stream or video, recorded video, that like just gives little teasers and then pulls people over into an actual experience with Julie and her book. 100%. Now for like, so other ideas here from like a more memoir perspective is I created something again within the last year. It was on that parking lot sheet, right? And I finally acted on it. I called it the Bravery Book Club, which was a book club with a bravery problem. And so what we've done with Dear Universe is basically, yes, we read the material, we read however many chapters each week. It's set up like a book club in that there's a reading assignment and it's a group. But when we come together, what we're really doing is we're taking the key takeaways, the universal elements of the human experience, and applying it to the person's individual quest for something in their life that they want to be more brave around. And so instead of it being like a book club where I'm like, me, and here's my story, it's like more like, how can we take what I've shared from my own personal experience and actually apply it to where you're at, what you're trying to seek and do in this season, and get you a little extra boost in the right direction, but using the book as a backdrop.
I think book club questions are always a good thing. I feel like there's never a scenario where a book club list of questions is bad. I think they lend themselves really well to memoirs, that's for sure. And I think there's opportunities in nonfiction books too. And I think the way that sounds like the way that you approached yours was, because like with memoirs, a lot of times it's like very self-reflective, right? Like what are you noticing in this person's story that's resonating most with you, and whatever that might look like. But what I also think a book club question can do is help you facilitate a constructive dialogue around your own content. Because like with my memoir, for example, House on Fire, I don't know why I have not shared her beauty at some point, but I will. Maybe next month I will show you the design to it, because it's very fun. I'll leave it at that. It'll be like a little teaser. But It is a really hard read. I'm not going to lie. Like, it's a very difficult read. And so I wanted to create book club questions at the end of it to just be able to create a space for people, if they are gathering and convening to have a conversation about what they just read, that they're doing it in a way that is not going to be derailing or like diminishing or upsetting to someone else who might be in that group. So that took a lot, even more extra effort to try to figure out how to construct those questions. But book club questions really have such a multi-function to them. And like, you have your journal, and like you were saying that you did it where you could, print it locally. It's not a super heavy lift, but from a, you can also just do it as work, like PDFs on your website too. Like, it doesn't have to be like sophisticated in a full journal yet. That might be like a future you thing to put on that parking lot list that we were talking about before.
Right. I think the one thing that I would encourage everyone to think about is, and you mentioned this a little bit ago, Jen, but looking at the time and that we want to wrap up, I want to kind of circle back around to this particular point. And this is actually something, which episode did we talk about intentionality? Last month, in February, we talked about intentionality. When you begin the book writing journey with intentionality, and you understand who you're trying to write to, what you're trying to say, why it's relevant to them, and what you're hoping to gain out of doing this, right? When you have those things figured out, those are just as important to writing the book as they are to figuring out how to promote the book, right? And everything that we are talking about here today is essentially promoting the book, and therefore promoting you, right? So when we're talking about the book becoming revenue generating opportunity, that's through those workshops. It's through the merchandise. It's through the box. It's through the talks. It's through the podcasts, whatever it is. And when you've already been able to identify clearly at the front end of this whole thing, those 4 pieces, your who, what, and why, right? But why gets divvied up into 2 different, right? For them and for you. You are going to be more in control of the entire journey, not just one piece of it, right? So really, truthfully, I think all of this begins with answering those questions, and that is going to lead to all of these opportunities that we're talking about today.
I think so well said. You're spot on.
Okay, so let's just do a fun little like rapid fire. What are you reading, Jen? What's on the nightstand at this point?
I have just finished High Achiever by Tiffany Jenkins. She is I don't know if we call her an influencer, but she's like a mom comedian is the bucket I would put her under. And I've just been in love with her comedy for probably a decade at this point. And her book has tons of amazing reviews, and it's just her story of basically leading a double life as someone who is an addict. And I absolutely loved it because it really shed light on people who struggle with addiction in a way that like you can actually relate to, and like almost feel like, oh wow, I could see how that might be able to happen to me or somebody that I love. So it was just a really, really good book. So it's Tiffany Jenkins. It's called High Achiever. It was amazing.
Nice. So I am actually reading Britney Spears' The Woman in Me.
How's that going?
All right. I giggle only because it feels silly to say for whatever reason. I'm not a Britney Spears fan in terms of like pop culture, music, whatever. But a best friend of mine said, no, I really liked it. Like, give it a shot, given that I'm in the memoir space. And he is a Britney Spears fan. And so I'm open to anything. And I'm really interested in memoir and how memoirs can be constructed. I'm also interested in how memoirs get labeled memoirs, because I find that sometimes, to me, they don't read as what I learned was considered memoir. And so this is always a very curious thing to me to study as a writer. And I would say that I am interested. I keep flipping the pages because it's very curious to me. I wouldn't say that it's I would say there's pieces that to me lack depth. And I don't mean that she's not making good points, but what I mean is I feel like there's a lot more telling than there is showing. And so while to some extent I find myself nodding in agreement when she discusses, for example, how women in the music industry and kind of celebritydom are treated very differently by tabloids than male counterparts. I can see myself going, yeah, I could totally see that. And that makes sense to me. And I agree. But I don't feel like we're ever really dropped into like a full-fledged sensory scene where I feel like I'm in the moment, like experiencing things with her. So definitely interesting to kind of look at as a writer, book coach kind of thing. And it's easy enough to kind of, get through quickly. But I don't find myself necessarily like really digging deep and gnawing on it, like, and figuring out where I resonate, right? Like, how does what she's saying about her journey transcend over to me?
So she's kind of like missing the universal truth of it all.
I mean, I'm like halfway through. And to me, I feel like it's a little bit more autobiographical than memoir, in like, when you think about memoir from like a, Eat, Pray, Love or Glass Castle.
Yeah, two great books. Yeah. Julius was Brittany, lots of exclamation points, and then is also reading the Paris book, Paris's memoir. Didn't even know there was one.
Yeah, me either. Drop into the chat what you think about that one. Actually, Brittany and Paris apparently are like BFFs.
I live under a rock, and everyone I know knows that I'm a cave woman, and I know nothing about what is happening in pop culture in any way, shape, or form. Had no idea that there was a Paris book. No idea.
Yeah, me neither. And I don't usually read like celebrity memoirs. Like, I think the last one I read was Michelle Obama's Becoming.
That was a good one.
If that counts as like celebrity memoir. Like,
I think it should. I think it should.
So yeah. So I don't usually follow up on, like, I didn't even watch the Oscars. Like, I just caught all that like in highlights.
I don't even know when they were. If you want to talk about being in a cave.
Sunday, a couple days ago.
This past Sunday. Yeah. I don't get out much.
Oh my gosh. All right, let's wrap up, Jen, by like telling the good people what we've got coming up, so that they can spend more time with us and pick up the sweet deets that we are dropping in writing and publishing. How about you go first?
Yeah, so it looks like our next show will be on Thursday, April 18th, I believe, is our next show, where we're going to be talking about plagiarism, copyright, AI issues, all kinds of do's and don'ts of using AI content in your book. I already kind of like gave a snippet of my opinion moments ago, but yeah, so we got a good conversation coming up in April. I just launched a new writing program that is a weekly writing circle for folks who just really need some added accountability to get the damn thing done, and they may not have the resources or means or desire to be in a more intense program or to work with a ghostwriter or whatever that might look like. And so we just launched it this week. So it's still kind of in a beta mode. So it's called Write Your Purpose. We like to keep purpose in it. So if you're interested, you can check out publishyourpurpose.com. And then there's on the side, there's a little button for it. So that is what I am promoting currently.
Awesome. So I've got a couple things coming up in April. One I already kind of talked about, which is the Do Not Write a Book Until You Attend This Workshop. That's a 2-part series with my co-author and I, happening in April, 90 minutes at a time. And I think we've linked to the registration page in the notes, or DM me if you want more details. The other one I've got coming up with another power partner, multi-time author and TEDx speaker and also comedian, Lisa David Olson. She's also the host of Stranger Connections. We're doing something called PJ's Pens and Prose. This is a Saturday writing workshop in our PJs in April, where we're taking people through kind of storytelling and developing a signature talk or getting their book going, and pairing how book and speaking go together hand in hand.
We do.
So we've got that linked somewhere in the show notes as well. Anything else we've got for people today, Jen, before we say goodbye till next time?
Quickly, I'm just looking. I just popped up our notes just to make sure that indeed it is linked. They are all in there. I have a free writing workshop that is from April 1st to the 5th, from 11 to 12 Eastern for 5 days straight. That is all about the mostly mindset of getting yourself like in the right place to get this done. So you're welcome to check that out. It's called the Publish Your Purpose Author Lab. So that is my other thing. You and I have no shortage of things going on at literally any point in time, ever.
So true. So come tap us, get some help, get some support, get some expert advice. And we look forward to seeing you all next month for another fabulous installment of Unscripted with Ally and Jenn, where we're bringing it all together with some copyright, IP, AI, acronyms, abbreviations. So
good discussion.
Join us again then, and thanks for joining us today. See you next time.
Beautiful. Thanks, Ally. Bye, everyone.